The best workout split. Hi everyone, Dan here, back for another video from the Geek Physique. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. The best workout split is the one you can stick to. So you should be basing this on your schedule. And when you're basing it on your schedule, you don't want to go for best case scenario. A lot of people get this wrong that I speak to, or before they work with us, they will tell me, on a good week when this happens, and if that happens, then I can get to the gym usually in the evening, if work actually finishes on time. And they are basically almost setting themselves up to fail because life is never perfect. It's usually somewhere in the middle, right? You have good days, you have bad days. Some weeks go great, some weeks don't go so good. So what is better to do is plan for worst case scenario. And this isn't like a negative thing. It's just thinking about realistically, if like everything went wrong, how can I ensure that I'm going to keep to a schedule? So I would recommend an absolute bare minimum of 2 times a week. I'll break down how those 2 times a week should be structured later on in the video, but 2 times a week is your absolute bare minimum. If not, try to go to 3 times a week and you can get great results, especially if you're a beginner, especially if you're even relatively untrained or you haven't been training optimally, training 3 times a week if you've got the right workout split, which again I'll come back to in a bit. When it comes to your scheduling, you also want to make sure you block out your time. I've talked about this in a lot of other videos, and this is something I often discuss with the clients we work with. This happens with your work. It happens if you've got a family, or whether you have kids or not, your immediate family, brothers and sisters, mum and dad, or kids or whatever. Basically, you have commitments in life that everyone, without question, will accept you having blocked periods of time. Even your work will accept it, right? Oh, I need to pick up my kids from school. More often than not, especially these days, your work will adapt to that. And vice versa, like with family members, oh yeah, I'm going to be at work that time, or with friends, right? Oh, I can't come at that time because I'm finishing work a bit later, but then I can come after, right? People always accept this. And my point is, you want to treat your workout routine and schedule in exactly the same way. You want to give it the same amount of respect. And a big part of that, it seems like a small thing, but a big part of it is the schedule. We think that, again, this goes back to my original point, if this happens when that happens, then I might be able to get to the gym. Like I said, it sets you up to fail. But if you have a set schedule based on worst case scenario, you can hit it no matter what, if everything goes wrong, and you have the exact times or a rough range of times that you will go, it just makes it a much more likely thing to happen. And I'm going to take this one step further. The biggest thing I've found that's helpful for the guys we work with is scheduling it as early as possible in the day, if not just train in the morning. If you do have a preference of training later in the day and you're consistent already with that, and that's not your issue, fair enough, don't change anything. But if you're finding, like I said, work gets busy, or it doesn't even get busy but I feel too tired, or something happens with my family, or I'm seeing my friends, insert a number of excuses you could have for not being able to train in the evening. Just wake up, go to bed earlier, wake up earlier, and get to the gym or do your workout at home, whichever one suits you best, right? And that's an important piece, actually, I'll just mention briefly. If the journey time to the gym is just too much, then it may be worth considering getting a really good at-home plan with some good equipment, adjustable dumbbells, a pull-up bar, things of that nature, especially if you're more in the beginner phase or you're relatively untrained or you haven't been training optimally. Those things can work, and they can work for a very long time before you really need to level up that equipment. And if you have the space, consider maybe getting a power rack or something like that. But that just removes the time to and from the gym and gives you that extra time to work out. So you want to set yourself up for success as much as possible. And if you are making any investments, you need to ensure you frame it in your mind as an investment in your health. That's why I call it investment rather than, yes, it is an expense, right? Of course, but you're going to be paying for a gym membership or you're going to be buying equipment at home, right? So either or. But again, the fundamental point here is the best workout split is first the one you can stick to. Consistency will always be inconsistency. It seems so obvious, but I speak to guys all the time, and I really hear this more often than I'd like. They'd say, well, you have to go gym like 5 days a week, and if you can't go 5, it's not worth going. And I just think it's a crazy way of thinking, right? It's like, well, if I can't do it perfectly, I'm not going to do it at all. And often, I found in my experience, again, working with clients, you actually do follow a layered approach with most habits. So you, especially if you want to set yourself up for success and be consistent, you go, okay, I know that I can maintain 2 or 3 times a week. Okay, if it's 2 or 3, I'll definitely do 2. I'll get a plan that's tailored to 2. Keep going with that, prove to myself that I can do it. Then I'll go up to 3. Okay, I've nailed that. Then I'll maybe consider going up to 4, etc. And it's those people, in my experience, that have the most success. And I'll give you a very quick example. This is a bit of a glimpse into later in the video, but let's say you're doing like back and biceps on a particular day, and you're expecting to train like, I don't know, push-pull legs, and the pull is back and biceps. And you're doing that 2 times a week. You want to train 6 days a week. But actually, more often than not, you get there 3 or 4 times a week. If you're really honest with yourself, like, yeah, okay, there's some weeks you go 6, or some weeks you go 5, but most of the time it's 3 or 4. You are going to be doing yourself a disservice. And you might say, well, I'm not that bothered about my legs. Just train your legs, okay? Just accept it that you have a full body. It's literally the foundation of your body. It's the thing that touches the ground first. And your physique's going to look pretty uneven if you're not training your legs. And there's a whole host of other reasons, but you should be training at least everything, at least a little bit, right? So the point I'm making here is if you're trying to do push-pull legs, you're doing that twice a week, and actually you only end up going 3 or 4 times a week, you might not be getting enough sets in to actually make a change to the body parts that are even important to you, right? So if you're meaning to do it twice a week, but you only do that back and bicep session once when you're supposed to do it twice, you've halved your volume almost. You've halved essentially the effectiveness of the working out you're doing. So it's much better then to consider going for a routine which is tailored and is optimized for 3 times a week, because you'd actually probably get more work even for the body parts which are more of a priority. Okay, upper body's more of a priority for you. It's probably going to get better progress doing 3 days a week consistently than 6 inconsistently. I think that makes sense, and I've driven the point home. The best workout split is the one that's tailored to your goals. So this is the next crucial point. I did touch on this just now, but your workout split should cover everything at least a little bit to at least maintain that muscle overall or grow it somewhat. Okay, there are some muscles that you could see as optional, I guess, right? But I would say that you want to train all your upper and lower body, anything with pushing or pulling, right? So, and pulling and pushing in the upper body, what I mean by that is pulling would be things like your hip hinge movements, so deadlifts, good mornings, things that like work your hamstrings, like big compound lifts that work your hamstrings, and then your push and obviously your glutes as well, and then your pushing would be more quads and glutes as well. Calves, I would say I do recommend training them. Some people just don't train them. Some people have really good genetics for calves without training them. Some people skip, do boxing or running, and they have good calves from doing that. So calves is one of those things where I would say, depending on your preference, a bit of an option there. And I guess the only other option I would say is abs as well, because if you're doing big compound lifts and you have a low body fat percentage, it's very likely you'd have decent abs. Some people just need to train them to really get a significant amount of depth and size and just that kind of like separation. And then obviously if you've got sport specific goals, which is a bit kind of separate to this is more so for just general fitness and general aesthetics. But this point as well is for more specific aesthetics, but not so much for sport specific stuff. Can't say that word. But my point here is, you might want to do more rotational type movements if you're doing, boxing as a sport or other sports that require that kind of movement. But my point here is, apart from abs and calves, those are kind of the only muscle groups I'd see as like kind of optional, but I would still train them at least a little bit. Abs, I would say for me, is the only one where I completely swap it out, but I would say calves should at least be a certain size if you want to have, respectable leg size all the way down and up. But once your plan covers at least everything a little bit, you then want to bias the parts of your body if they're more of a focus for you. And you can do that in a number of ways. So you can do it by doing more volume across the week, which is basically just doing more sets, right? So let's say you do roughly 10 sets per body part per week. I know not everyone's going to be doing that. It's just an example. You might want to do 12 or 14 for those body parts which are more of a priority for you. Another thing which I think is actually crucial to do is training it first. A lot of people get this wrong and they end up training something which is a priority for them later in their workout. So if they want bigger arms, they just add on more sets at the end of their workout and they're like, why am I not getting bigger arms? And I did this for a while as well. And it's like, how can you really say that you're prioritizing it if you're not actually prioritizing it? And whatever is a priority goes first by definition. So in some arm focused programs, you could even consider training them before your compound lifts. I wouldn't say that's absolutely necessary, but you want to train them as early as possible in the workout. So it may be that you do like a compound lift, an isolation move for your arms, and then another compound lift. That's called a sandwich. It's something I got from Renaissance Periodization, which can be super effective. But again, consider training your priorities as early as possible, and also not just in the workout, but in the week, right? So you, depending on the way you have your workout split up, you'd probably want to put your biggest priority with the most amount of sets earliest in the week. Okay, so let's say chest is a big priority for you. Everything's a bit you want to grow everything, but chest is number one on the list. You'd probably put chest on day one of that week. Even if you're doing full body, you'd probably want to train it first in that full body session and do the majority of your sets in that session, as an example. And then frequency. So most people at this stage know that training a body part at least twice a week is a good idea. There is studies that show that as long as the volume is the same across the week, whether you train it once or twice, it doesn't make a difference, except that past a certain point, you get something called junk volume. Meaning, if you do more than 8 to 10 sets, 12 sets at a push per body part in a day, in one session, then you kind of get to the point where you're doing junk volume, and those later sets might not be as effective, and they probably would be more effective on a separate day. So this point is on frequency is if you want to do more volume across the week, which was one of my first points around tailoring your workout split to your goals, you want to ensure that you're probably training those muscle groups at least twice a week, if not 3 times a week, to do that. Depending on the muscle group though, you just might not recover, because some muscle groups, when they're large muscle groups, they're very fast twitch. You can't train them as frequently because you're just sore, especially if you give them their due. So for example, even if hamstrings is a focus for me, when I do a hip hinge movement, I get so sore for days, I couldn't then train it soon after, even from 1 or 2 sets if you're doing the movements correctly. So just to recap, because I know I've said a lot in this second point, make sure the workout split is tailored to your goals. Make sure it at least covers everything a little bit. And then your focus whatever is more of a priority for you, consider doing more volume. So that's more sets across the week. Consider training it earlier in the session and or the week, and consider training it more frequently as well across the week. Now, I want to cover some considerations and examples which tie back to my the two fundamental points, which was a workout split you can stick to and one that's tailored to your goals. So the example splits, and a lot of you have heard this before. I'm not going to cover the bro split because I don't know that many people that really works for, in all honesty. Most of the people that have YouTube channels out there, apart from maybe like Dorian Yates, who's a massive figure in the bodybuilding scene, right? And I know that he was a big proponent of doing quite low volume, if I remember correctly, and like dedicating a body part per session. But the majority of people I've seen and that I respect and that I follow, and what's worked for me and my clients, is getting enough volume across the week per body part. And I believe the studies do, the majority of studies do support this. And my content is honestly tailored to let's say the average Joe or the beginner or someone who hasn't been training optimally. Like, I'm under no illusion, like, look at me, I'm not going to be trying to give advice to advanced people or even some intermediate people, but maybe people that have been training for years but not training optimally, or people who are just starting out their journey. This is who this information is for. So getting back to the point, the example splits that would be good for you are the following: full body, upper lower, push pull legs, or pull push legs, or legs push pull, PPL basically. And if you're actually looking to really maximize things, it's more for advanced. And I know I said I wasn't giving advanced people advice, but you can consider this if you've got the time, you really want to maximize what you're doing, is AM and PM training, which is twice a day sessions. Okay. Now, if you're just starting out, full body is going to be really good for you because honestly, anything you do is going to make a change. So you might as well start off with the least amount you need to get the most amount of return, right? And that way you can really instill good habits. You can work on your consistency. And once you've hit, I would say 3 full body sessions a week, if you can, you do that for a good 8 weeks, 12 weeks, maybe even 16 weeks. Then you could consider maybe going up to 4 days a week. Like I said right at the start of the video, you want to do at least 2 times a week. So if you can only train 2 or 3 times a week, I would recommend full body. If you can train 4 days a week or 5 days a week, I would train upper lower training. And then if you can do 6 days a week, and again, this is consistently, not sometimes, it's consistently, no matter what, worst case scenario, I would do push-pull legs. Now, if you can do 6 or 7 days a week, or actually, even if you can do, I would say, even just 2 times a week, depending on what your schedule is like. I've worked with so many clients that have just different crazy schedules. AM, PM training might just make sense for you. So actually, I would say the last point here, AM, PM training, doing 2 sessions in the days that you train, I would say that kind of applies to any of these, depending on what your goals are. But usually, AM and PM training is for the most advanced, where you want to make sure you're getting enough volume, quality volume, for as many of your body parts as possible across the week, right? But it could also apply to someone who you only have 2 days, but on those 2 days you have lots of time and you want to really maximize the sessions you have. You could split them up and do them AM and PM, right? But let me go back to full body, upper lower, and PPL. I want to cover these off and then we'll finish up for the video. So full body, 2 or 3 times a week, really good. And it will allow you to get in enough volume across the week. I did this for a while myself and got great results. And then the reason I consider upper lower for 4 times a week is it just allows you to get in a bit more quality volume for the the muscles in the upper body compared to the lower body. You could do it lower upper or upper lower depending on your priority, right? And then 5 days a week, which is what I train at the moment, the reason I still only do upper lower in those 5 days is I do it upper lower Monday, Tuesday, and upper lower Thursday, Friday. But then Wednesday, it's a lighter day where I do Muay Thai practice just for fun. I actually teach a beginner's class in that. It's just for fun, not competitively. But I also do some delts and calves on that day as well because they're a priority for me and they recover super quickly for me. But my point here is I would still train upper lower probably with 5 days. You could just use that middle day to do maybe bits of extra bits for like those smaller muscle groups that recover faster, maybe for biceps, delts, calves, things like that. And then 6 days a week, the tried and tested push-pull legs or pull-push legs or legs push-pull or legs pull-push, you get the idea. However you want to structure it, depending on your priorities, I think works really well. It allows you to get in more quality volume, not just for your upper body, but it allows you to split it into, your back and biceps and your chest, triceps, and you could put shoulders wherever you feel like it fits. But again, splits it out, allows you to get more quality volume more often throughout the week. Okay, so those are some examples and considerations to keep in mind that you could go away with and start training now, right? So once you've got your schedule in place, pick one of those, make sure it's tailored based on what the priorities are for you in terms of your body parts. And then you can consider AM PM training, if you have a crazy schedule, even if you're not advanced and you have, 2 or 3 good days where you really want to maximize those days. So I'm going to recap the video because I've talked a lot, touched on a lot of key points here, and just give you just a general summary that you can go away with. So the best workout split is the one you can stick to based on your schedule, worst case scenario, and you need to make sure you're blocking out that time. Next, the best workout split is the one that is tailored to your goals. So it should cover at least a bit of everything in your entire body, but then you should bias the things that are most important to you based on the volume you do across the week, training it first in the session or the week, or more frequently throughout the week. And then some examples, one more time, is full body. You could do that 2 or 3 times a week. Upper lower, you could do that 4 or 5 days a week with some, extra bits in the middle. And then PPL, you can do 6 days a week twice. You do it 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6 again. And then you can do AM, PM training depending if you have a crazy schedule or you are maybe more advanced and you want to make sure you get in as much quality volume as possible. I hope this video was helpful for you. Please leave a comment below if you have any questions, and there should be a video here or here. I'll see you in the next one.